Ryan, thank you so much for being here today. And this is super exciting for me. This is my third podcast, so it is raw. I have no experience with media whatsoever. And the only rules are that politics are off the table, and it's all things Alaska. That's really all we're going to talk about. And I have reached out to, I think, 10 different individuals that I've known in periphery, all over the state of Alaska. I'm third generation Alaskan, and I Googled you right before this at lunch. Sorry for the salmon breath, but and I got the wrong Ryan Binkley. So I learned a lot about politics in Texas.
You wanted the better looking, more successful Ryan Binkley from Texas? Yeah, I'm aware of Ryan Binkley in Texas. He's great.
Not you.
Yeah.
So I was surprised when you walked through the door, so I know nothing. What I do know is that I've lived in Anchorage. I have, I was born here. I've lived in Wasilla, and I've lived in Fairbanks. And Fairbanks, if there was a royalty name, I would say there's about 3 of them. And your family is one of them. And so I was super excited that I just reached out cold. I know nothing about you. I think we met briefly at Rotary one day. And I know that I've advertised with you since you've bought the paper, which what inspired me to reach out was gratitude for the investment. Knowing the environment in Fairbanks and Anchorage were rivals, right? Nanooks, seawolves, I mean, it goes to the way back. And so just the fact that your family would extend themselves to support a transition, if you will, there's some gratitude here as an Alaskan. So just to start, if you were to introduce yourself, like, I know nothing about you. It's me, Paula. Hi, Ryan. Give us a little bit of your background about being Alaskan.
Sure, happy to, and thanks for the invitation to do this. I'm happy to be here and to have a chat. I'm born and raised in Fairbanks. Lifelong Alaskan like yourself. I've been here, or our family's been here for 4 generations, going back to the Klondike Gold Rush in 1898. My great-grandfather was a boat builder and operator on the Ohio River in the middle of the country. And in the late 1800s, went west and north. The economy was terrible and was looking for opportunity and adventure, and wound up in Seattle in 1898 when the gold rush hit in the Yukon. Got on a steamship, went up to Skagway, up and over the Chilkoot Pass like thousands of other guys did in those days, and immediately went to work building boats and rafts, what he knew how to do. He wasn't a gold miner, but he was just looking for adventure, and built over the years a shipping company in Southeast Alaska, headquartered in Wrangell, and he worked all over the Yukon territories.
What was the name of that? Alaska. Was it your family name too?
It was... I don't remember what the name of it was. He had partners, and I forget, they had various companies, and I don't remember what the names of them were. But this was right at the turn of the century, and then worked that area for almost 30 years. My grandfather was born in Wrangell, lived there, and his father, my great grandfather, died early. He was only 5. He moved back to California with his mother, and then when he was 18, finished school, he went north just like his father had done decades prior and became a riverboat captain. Started out as a deckhand in Wrangell and worked his way up to the captain level, eventually migrated to the interior of Alaska.
Who knew that transferable skills could go from a riverboat in Ohio to Alaska?
Yeah.
Because the water's a little different.
Yeah.
How cool.
I think back then, people were moving west, and the west was still the frontier. And of course, the west had been settled, but once everyone hit the Pacific Ocean, the adventurers started heading north, and so they came to Alaska. So it was as much about a desire for adventure and having a big, exciting life as it was, building boats or anything like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we got into my grandparents came to the interior. My grandfather came to the interior. Met my grandmother, started a family there, and then in 1950 decided to get off the road as a riverboat captain and started a boat tour. He met with a guy named Chuck West, who was a Seattle travel agent, was bringing the first organized tour groups up through Denali National Park, flying out of Fairbanks, and needed something for them to do when they were in Fairbanks. And there was no tourism industry in Alaska then. There was no tourists as we think of them now. Chuck West was a real pioneer, went on to found Cruise West, the West Mark Hotels, West Tours, a tourism empire. But back then he was just getting started. And so he talked my grandfather into starting a boat tour for the summertime. And so for the first time ever, he didn't go out and haul freight and people. He hauled tourists in 1950 that came to town. And that's how we got started. And the business and the family grew over the decades. And here we are today.
I love Alaska history because, number one, we can, through storytelling, we're able to memorialize how we got here. And when we talk about history in Alaska, we do it with such affection. And in the lower 48, they might be talking 100 years ago or 200 years ago. And for us, 50 years, there's a whole lot of experience kind of crunched into that time, right? So the idea of this podcast is people of a certain generation who have a memory of or have ancestors just one off where you can tell us how you got here, but tell me why the heck do you stay?
People ask that, especially when I travel outside of Alaska. It was a fantastic place to grow up. I think when you have lived your whole life here, you probably feel this. It's great to travel, particularly in the winter, obviously, and see the rest of the world. And we're very lucky to get to do that. But I've never found a place in the world as cool as a lot of places are and as fun as they are to visit that really fits and feels right like it does here for whatever reason, the good and the bad, the darkness and the sunlight, the warmth in the summer and the cold. It all feels like home to me. I've been here for my whole life, so it's where I'll be my whole life. I don't have a great scientific explanation for why, but that's the way I feel about it.
Well, a couple of podcasts ago, I asked Natasha this from her mouth, and she was amazing because I think similar to you, education from outside, you've done different things, you've had different experiences from a business perspective, so you could be setting up shop anywhere. How about the business part? What do you enjoy about working up here?
Well, I learned early on. So I went to high school in Fairbanks, left the state, and I got a degree in petroleum engineering in Colorado. I love engineering, and I love Colorado, and lived there for years after I graduated. I met my wife there. She's an engineer from Colorado as well, and realized pretty quick my first engineering job out of school was for Arco in Anchorage here downtown. And it was cool work, but I hated being in a big company. It ruined me. So just like sort of life in Alaska ruined me for living anywhere else but Alaska, growing up in a family business ruined me for life in a corporation. Yeah. And so business-wise, I've kind of fallen back into what I grew up with as well, which is a small family business. And I wouldn't have any other career than being an entrepreneur and working in a small family business. Oh,
that's fantastic. I grew up trucking. So my first actual job was pilot carring out of Fairbanks for my dad. And I often say, why the heck didn't I stick with the family business? Trucking is great. I could have, who needs a podcast? I'd have a reality TV show right now. Yeah, right. Right. So when you came back, so tell me about what do you have your fingers in across the state? I know about Anchorage, Alaska Daily News, Anchorage Daily News. We've been through a few iterations. Yep. And again, I really value and appreciate the fact that you honor legacies. At least that's my impression. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about that decision.
Well, so tourism is our main job. Our number one sort of main flagship business is in Fairbanks. We do Riverboat tours there, sort of a replica of the tours my grandfather was giving 75 now years ago. In fact, this summer was our 75th anniversary of our company. And,
wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's no small thing.
Thank you. Yeah,
that's really cool.
It's very rare for a company to be around that long, especially to be family held for that long.
Absolutely.
That's exceedingly rare.
And the family's still talking.
Yeah,
that's really rare.
Most days, we still get together for holidays and weekends and things. Most of us work together. So tourism is our main focus. We have tours across the state. I took over the company in 2006. My dad was running the company, and then he has been in and out of politics over the years, and he left to go run for governor in 2006. And I was 27, I think, and I took over as president of the company. And so that was been my full-time job is conducting our tours in Fairbanks. And then before COVID, maybe in 17 and 16, we started looking at how we could grow our company, and we started looking at adding tours in other parts of the state.
Right.
The tour economy in Alaska is very diverse. It's sprawling across the state. Of course, there's million at 6, I think, visitors that come to Alaska every year.
I'm sure you're the same. Whenever I go to the lower 48, I try to explain people we have 1.5 million tourists. That's my number because I'm out of industry. And I have Wasilla math in me. So there's that.
That's good.
And I said, we have less than 1 million people that live here year round.
And we do it in 4 months, by the way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's extraordinary, number one. Our population literally doubles in the summer. Mm-hmm. And then part of the whole inspiration for the whole podcast thing is, what keeps you here during the winter is what usually drives us in our industries and in our job so that we can do whatever it is we love doing. How did your wife transition up here? That doesn't always happen easily.
Yeah. We were a really good match because she came from a 3rd-generation family business that she'd grown up in as well. In the cattle industry. They were farmers and owned feedlots in eastern Colorado. So she was...
I have to, one point here, this is on your wife's behalf, and we can edit this out.
Sure.
If you own cattle, you're not a farmer, you're a rancher.
Well, they had both.
They did? Okay.
They raised their own feed.
Because I got scolded by somebody.
Sure. No, they of course fed cattle, and then they grew their own corn and made their own feed.
Okay, all right.
Had a whole feed production plant. As a matter of fact, they manufactured feed for them and others. They had a trucking business and all. It was a great business, and so we got married. And she came to Alaska kind of before we were engaged. Actually, she came to Alaska for a year, like a lot of people, and said we'd kind of see how it went. And then we decided to get engaged and then married. And she's done great up here. I mean, she's a big part of the Fairbanks community. She's worked for us in the tourism business for years, and then left to start her own business, and she founded a small preschool and elementary school, a Montessori-based school in Fairbanks.
Oh, that's great.
Called Spruce Tree Montessori School. Started with 5 kids and 1 teacher and her, and they have 10, 12 years ago, and they have over 100 kids and 13 staff and own their own building.
Wow.
It's a really cool addition to the Fairbanks educational community. And she, I think, really has enjoyed her time in Alaska. She came from a small town, so it felt good to go to a small town. And the winters, of course, are tough for everybody, the darkness, but she's a trooper and not ever shied away from an adventure. And she's enjoyed it. And we've been lucky to be able to travel. We travel a lot in the winter. The tourism business is nice. It's a great lifestyle because things are slower in the winter.
Right.
We have a lot to do in the winter. But particularly post-COVID, we can do a lot of that work remotely. So we do get out around the country more in the wintertime.
When people ask me about tourism in Alaska, just as somebody that lives here, when I mention there's less than 1 million people, I said also recognize how big the state is. So every tour is very different. And so oftentimes people that take a large cruise feel like they've seen Alaska. And I said, oh, no, you haven't seen even a skosh.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a technical term or not, but even a little piece of it. And so often I'll say, there is nothing like the ice sculptures in Fairbanks. And then I have never taken the riverboat.
Oh, my goodness.
Isn't that the saddest thing?
Oh, well, we got to change that.
Yeah, well, I think it's really kind of cool. So, and again, that's some of that, that adoration is just being a young person. And the first year I lived in Fairbanks, it was, I think, close to 60 below. And I'd just come from Arizona going to college, and my dad sequestered me to Fairbanks. So I went to work and then started going to UAF at the same time, and it was cold. The only thing that got me was the ice fog.
Yeah.
Yeah. For people who don't know what that is, could you explain it?
Yeah, the ice fog is pretty gnarly. When you get to really extreme cold temperatures and in a dry, very still environment. When we get really, really cold, it's usually the cause of an inversion, where a high pressure layer sits on top of a low pressure layer, and it forces cold air to the bottom. Typically, in an environment, it's colder up top, at the top of a mountain than it is down below. It's the opposite. It inverts in Fairbanks and the Tanana Valley when it gets really cold, and so that super cooled, dense, dry air just settles right down in town in the valley, and it's so cold and so still that emissions from cars, emissions from oil-fired furnaces freeze instantly when they hit that cold air and form this really dense fog. The particulate matter is encased in ice crystals that forms this super dense ground fog that just settles over town. If you go up in the hills, you get above it, it can be a bright sunny day and you look down on a layer of fog that's just blanketing over the whole valley. But when you're down in town, of course, it's really hard to navigate. First of all, it's 60 below.
Right.
The roads are icy.
Right.
It's dark. And now there's this thick soup of a fog, like you're in San Francisco in this environment as well. It feels like you're on Mars. I mean, it's really trippy.
Well, and as I mentioned, I grew up in trucking, so that it's a little fascinating to me. And I love that you said it much more intelligently. What I say is I'm claustrophobic because there's a lot of fog right around you. You don't see very much. And my tires froze. So when you drive, it takes a while for them to warm up, and they kind of...
60 below affects everything. I mean, we all have these houses and we got to keep clean water flowing in and dirty water flowing out, and the thing's warm and all at 60 below. It's a challenge to live there. There's a lot of implications for automobiles. Your tires freeze flat, your battery freezes, engine block freezes. Ice fog makes it hard. Teasing
when I tell them that I used a space heater to warm up the engine so that I could get it started from my job. Get home.
Yeah. But, it's the one thing that shuts down the schools. I mean, we go to school there's no temperature shut down for schools necessarily, but when it gets to that there's so much ice fog or the roads are so bad that the buses can't operate, then we talk about shutting down schools. But if those two conditions are acceptable, kids will be going to school down to 30, 40, 50 below. And
I think that's sort of the rub, right? Because when I'm at the same time telling people from the lower 48, you need to go to Fairbanks in the winter, they hear a story like that. Why would I want to go there? Those ice sculptures are amazing. The hot springs are amazing. It's just a beautiful, different environment. The terrain is different. I am sure I'm inaccurate, but I explained it as a high plain plateau. And except for it's totally flat. Yeah. There's nothing, you're not looking at the mountains that you'd expect to see coming to Alaska, but you see a whole different part of Alaska. So I think it's the Golden Heart City for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, it's an extreme place to live. There's places on Earth that are warmer, places on Earth that are colder, but very few on Earth that span the temperature range that we do in Fairbanks, from 90 above in the summer to 60 below in the winter. Sometimes days where in 24 hours it'll swing 40, 50 degrees. And it's a land of extremes. Of course, the daylight, we get down to 3.5 hours of daylight this time of year and 3.5 hours of darkness, although it's pretty bright out in the summertime. And you talked about what it was like to grow up here versus other places in the world. When you live in an extreme environment like that, it just informs every part of your life. Even though we have auto starts and heated garages, we still live in association with our environment in a way that I think doesn't exist in cities or in other more temperate climes, because the environment informs everything that we do on a daily basis. The sunlight, the temperature, the mosquitoes, the moose, the fox, the bears, all of those things are part of our daily life. And so it's very odd to me to live in a place where you're not as connected to the world around you. And it engenders a sense of community. When you live in those extreme temperatures, it's a survival situation really quick when your car breaks down at 30, 40, 50, 60 below zero. So it's sort of a forcing function of, we're all in this place, this strange, extreme place together. And it's kind of like you're in this club where only the people who have lived there kind of understand it and have grown to love it.
That's actually true. And as I mentioned, living there, Wasilla and Anchorage, each community is totally different in the way that they adapt to unique environment. And it's really less about culture and more about, I think, atmosphere, to be honest. Like what's outside your front door. And so you answered the... I should have used you for a sound bit, because that's the reason for this whole podcast is, at the core of what Alaskans are, we're people first, and the people that really choose to commit and do something positive in the state. I'm just really interested in finding out, at the end of it, I worked for an orthopedic surgeon for 10 years, and he was a great mentor. And he said, at the end of your life, all you take with you is your reputation.
Yeah.
Everything else you leave on the table, right? So what do you want that to look like?
I don't know. I don't really think about that, if I'm honest.
And it's not an external question. I'm, what's that thing that you're striving for?
I don't really think about what people think of me or what they'll think of me when I'm gone or whatever.
I love you,
I just like doing cool, fun stuff. It's a bonus when it helps improve the state and strengthen our community. That's icing on top. I probably should be more strategic or have more thoughts about those sorts of things, but I just don't. People can think whatever they want of me when I'm gone or when I'm done, and that's up to them. It doesn't really inform my decision making.
I love that. What's the one thing that most people ask you in interviews? Because you've got to have that standard question that you're prepped for. What should I have asked?
Well, we usually talk a lot about my life here in Alaska and where we came from and our business and things like that. People often ask a lot about the newspaper. Why in the world you would buy a newspaper in 2017? Then now it's
I didn't want to ask that because I'm just grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. We talk a lot about the news. The news is an interesting business. It's a hard business. It's a fun business. I didn't grow up in the newspaper world. I didn't have any desire or interest in journalism other than as a voracious consumer and a longtime fan of the news business. So it's been a real education. It's been the most fun I've had in my working life ever. If I knew how much fun this business was, totally.
Oh,
and I have a really fun job. I drive a boat for a living.
Yeah.
I work outside in Alaska, and being in the news business, if I would have known what it was like 20, 30 years ago, I would have had a different career for sure. I really enjoy it. It's a really cool business. It's really, really important, I think, to our state and just the democracy in general. And it's just a fun place to be in the community. When you're in the news business in the community, you're kind of in the middle of all the action.
Right.
You're kind of, you get to learn every day. All I do every day is just learn about what's going on in the oil and gas business, in local and state government, in the nonprofit world, in the Native communities. You just get to kind of have touchstones in every part of the state. You feel like you're in the middle of the conversation, and you get to help drive the conversation.
That's right. Wow. That's really cool. I didn't expect that. So now I have no follow-up question. Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
What else do people ask you? Are you still driving the boat? I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I got my captain's license when I was 18. There are, I can't remember now, 13 or 14 licensed captains in our family.
Wow.
Most of us got our license when we were 18. Well, my grandparents had 3 boys, and they each had families. We had our first ever all-family meeting last January.
Some people call that a reunion, but go ahead.
Right.
Keep going.
Our Thanksgiving dinner is like a meeting for us, and so the whole family got together, and I think there were 30 something of us, 32 of us, including my 99-year-old grandmother, who is still with us and still doing great, and we're now planning her 100th birthday for April.
Oh, that is fantastic. Tell her happy birthday. That is just great. That is really cool. So just for context, we talked a little bit about my family. My dad had a trucking company in Fairbanks, and he had the DRA contract up there for years, right? And so he's an interesting guy on his own, and transportation is in our blood. I don't know why I left trucking. I should still be in that vocation. I understand that your dad's taken up a new hobby.
Yeah, well, he's sort of reprised an old hobby, I guess. So my dad, our whole family, I think just genetically are risk takers. We really love taking risks, whether it's in business or in life. And my dad probably chief amongst us in that category. And I guess it would be 1975, 50 years ago, he was, I think, 20 and maybe even, I think it was about 20. They had just completed the road to Prudhoe Bay, and they finished it and opened it in December of 1975. And he wanted to be the first person ever to ride his motorcycle from Prudhoe Bay down south. And so he somehow got his bike on a cargo plane, flew it up to Dead Horse, and drove the Dalton Highway all the way south in December, this time of year.
Oh my gosh.
It came through Fairbanks, and it was 60 below. And his motorcycle, this is in the 70s, with 70s gear and 70s machinery, and stayed in Fairbanks for a few days, and then kept going south, went down through Tok and through Canada, all the way to the southern tip of Tierra del Fuego.
Are you kidding?
The southern tip of South America. And he was the first person ever to go from the Arctic Ocean all the way down to the Antarctic at the very bottom of the globe. It took him about 3 months, maybe a little more, and it was a sort of historic feat, and
absolutely,
it was something that is a big part of his life story. And so this was the 50th anniversary of that ride, and he, over the last couple days with the assistance of my brother and my sister, who were kind of supporting him with a support vehicle. Went back up to Dead Horse with a BMW, same model that he used in the 70s.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, and drove. It wasn't quite as cold. It wasn't 60 below, but they saw 15 and 20 below. Studded tires, everything just like he had back then, and drove all the way back down into Fairbanks and reprised his journey, at least the first part of it, from Riverboat
Right.
down to Fairbanks.
And how old is he?
He's 70 something.
Something? That's
72
good.
maybe, something like that. So
that is so cool. That is so great.
yeah, another big adventure. He's like I said, a risk taker and loves an adventure and a challenge. And it was kind of an epic journey. And my sister was keeping everybody updated on Instagram, and we were talking to them by text messages. And he had some harrowing corners, and getting over Atican Bass was a challenge, but they made it.
Well, now I feel like I need to go back to my dad and give him a challenge.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what the Binkleys are doing.
Yeah.
So that's great. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And all of them live up here? Do some of them live in...
All of us live here in Alaska for part of the year. I have two uncles who are mostly retired, and they spend part of the winter outside.
Okay.
But generally, we all live in or around Alaska.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
What's your hope for Fairbanks?
Well, I think Fairbanks is a really cool town. It's a different town, I've learned the more I travel. I guess maybe, again, going back to growing up there, it kind of gets in your blood. I think that there's a lot of economic headwinds in Fairbanks and the state in general, but particularly in the interior, high cost of energy. We're sort of the jumping off point for all of the development on the North Slope. So over the decades, as North Slope oil production has come down, it's had an effect on the Fairbanks economy. I'd love to see us producing more oil on the North Slope and sort of revitalizing the north half of the state. A lot of companies are doing that. A lot of exciting news on that front. So that's very exciting. We're lucky to have world-class healthcare in Fairbanks. We're sort of the regional healthcare hub for the northern and northwestern half of the state as well. And so we have world-class facilities in Fairbanks that we're very lucky that most communities our size wouldn't have. We've got a fantastic university system that's that I hope is strong and healthy for years to come. And Fairbanks is a military town. We have an Army base and an Air Force base, great partners, big parts of our community. Of course, Alaska is a real center for the Air Force in defending the country from the Pacific or in the Pacific, and Fairbanks is a big part of that. So, I hope all those things stay strong. I really hope that it's a good place to start businesses. I love small businesses. I love family businesses. I love interesting business ideas. Yeah. And so I really hope Fairbanks continues to be a place where somebody can just start a business and make it on their own steam.
Absolutely. Any other questions? You have any questions for me? I've never asked that before.
How do you like being a podcaster?
This is 3N. It's very uncomfortable for me. I really like being behind the scenes, and I like promoting other people's business and other people in general. So it's a little uncomfortable, but you're making it easy, so I appreciate it.
Well, I think you're natural.
Well, I don't know about that, but thank you. I appreciate it very much. And I was in healthcare for 22 years. I got my first job in healthcare working for Dr. Vrablik in Fairbanks.
All right.
So I worked for him for 2 years, he and his wife, and family business, physician, and from there came back to Anchorage and worked in healthcare down here. So I agree with you. The healthcare up there is pretty spectacular.
Yeah. What's
your hope for Anchorage?
Well, similar. I wanted it to be a strong, thriving community. Anchorage is an interesting town. I've really gotten to know Anchorage. Like you mentioned earlier, it's funny if someone from Fairbanks came to Anchorage. There's always been a rivalry between Fairbanks and Anchorage. I've been spending time in Anchorage for a long, long time, so it's like a second home to me. I've always actually really enjoyed Anchorage. I have to defend it when I go back to Fairbanks. I think Anchorage is a great.
Don't worry, I have to do that when I go 40 miles and go to Wasilla.
Yeah, I think it's a great town. We joked when we bought the paper that we were going to change it because the name was the Alaska Dispatch News. We were going to change it to the Anchorage Daily News, brought to you by Fairbanks.
That's fantastic.
Kicked around I
don't know if my Anchorage friends will feel great about that, but I think it's funny.
No, yeah. Anchorage, very similar to Fairbanks, is obviously the seat of the state. I'd love to see Anchorage be able to tackle what I think is a stagnant housing market. I don't know how to do that. Well, I got some thoughts, but it's a big topic. But I think that's a real issue for Anchorage is the cost of housing and this sort of frozen housing market. And I think there's some ways that could be unlocked, and I think that'd really be a help for the community.
My own children have left Anchorage and moved to the Valley for those reasons, to be able to afford a home and raise young kids.
The Valley is the only place you can afford to really buy or build a home.
Right, and my dad was born here, so I've got some skin in the game, so to speak. And
I think that's a foundational issue. I think that touches a lot of the economic issues in Anchorage. It's just the inability to provide affordable housing for mid and young career people. I think really hollows out a community, and so I think that's a big issue. And
it's also interesting to me, as large as our state is, as small as the population is, there have been economic drivers at different decades where I felt like Fairbanks was almost neglected in the 80s. And although everywhere was struggling because of oil prices, right? Then I feel like it's almost flip-flopped. Fairbanks, to me, when I step foot, the vibe is just vibrant, and it makes me really excited for Fairbanks. So I appreciate your candor and your insight into both communities.
Yeah, well, that's good. I appreciate it. I'm glad you get that feeling. Living there, it's hard sometimes to, as they say, read the label from inside the bottle. So it's nice to hear that perspective about Fairbanks.
It just is what it is. Well, I don't really have very much else to say. Again, not experienced at this. Any closing thoughts?
Oh, thank you. This was great. Good to have a conversation.
No.
And appreciate your support of the Anchorage Daily News. I appreciate everybody who supports and subscribes to the newspaper. I think it's, as I said before, I think it's a really important institution. And I always try to leave with a plug for the newspaper,
Well, you should. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I really think, I know we're not going to get into politics, but I really think regardless of your politics, whether it's right side or left side or down the middle, which I think most of us probably are, I think that most people would agree that discourse in this country is at an all-time low and that polarization is at an all-time high. And there's lots of ways we could fix that, and I don't have any magic solutions. But I think one thing that would help would be if more people read their local newspaper. And I always try to put a plug in for that, to encourage the people that you talk to, the people in your family, to read the paper. I think that would go a long way towards helping strengthen the state and our communities.
Well, and for me, it's a link of relationship that is not interfered with politically, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So I appreciate it very much. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man. You've got lots of things going on, and you could be spending your time somewhere else, and I appreciate you being here.
Happy to. Thank you.